Hi guys, today we have a video on Mrs. Astor's New York, a very interesting book, and we're going to show some of the pictures that are in this marvelous book, and let's take a look at it right now. This is Mrs. Astor's New York, and this I got at Housing Works a number of months back. I'm pretty sure it was Housing Works where I bought it. Let's take a look at some of the pictures here. This is, what was this? Hold on. Here, you can read it yourself if you want. Mrs. Frances Burke Roach, Fanny Roach probably, against the wishes of her father, the railroad magnate Frank Work, who regarded European aristocrats as little more than fortune hunters. Fanny Work married the brother of Baron Fermoy. Her son, Edmund, later inherited the Irish title. Through Edmund's daughter, Fanny Work became the great-grandmother of Diana, Princess of Wales. Oh, so she is the great-grandmother of Diana, Princess of Wales. Her luck in the marrying business was about as poor as Diana's, and she was later disinherited after divorcing her husband in 1891 and marrying a Hungarian horse trainer, a marriage which lasted only 4 years. So this is Mrs. Frances Burke Roach, Fanny Work. This is Mrs. Astor's New York. Money and social power in a gilded age. Mrs. Astor's undisputed queen of New York City in the decades before the First World War used her prestige to create a social aristocracy in the city. An invitation to one of her parties was a coveted mark of social acceptance, and exclusion meant social banishment. Mrs. Astor's story, which reads like a novel by Edith Wharton, sheds important new light on the origins, extravagant lifestyle, and social competitiveness of this aristocracy, and is told here with a vigor and elegance by Eric Homberger. Very interesting. Seems like an interesting book. Let's see this one here. Sally Hargui. There was a touch of professionalism about her loveliness, and Sally Hargui was received with open arms into New York society. By 1890, she was a regular at Mrs. Astor's dancing parties at Newport and had been listed in the 400. Being a celebrated debutante did not prepare her for the long littleness of married life. Her second marriage with the socialite Woodbury Kane, great-grandchild of John Jacob Astor, at least forged a connection with the Astors. So that's interesting. This is Sally Hargui. You can find out exactly how to pronounce her name. But anyway, let's go further through some of these interesting illustrations. Richard Varick. Varick had a distinguished record in the Revolutionary War, serving as George Washington's secretary. After the war, he held a number of important political offices and served as president of the New York chapter of the Society of the Cincinnati. From 1789 to 1801, Richard Varick was mayor of New York. Oh, that's interesting. From 1789 to 1801, Richard Varick was mayor of New York. He was the last Federalist to hold that office. There's a Varick Street in Manhattan, so that was named after him. Most probably, like Like a 99% the probability it was named after Richard Varick, as he was the from 1789 to 1801 he was the mayor of New York. Let's continue over here. Maria Gansvoort Melville. Maria Gansvoort Melville was painted circa 1815 by Ezra Ames. There is a quasi-fictionalized portrait of her in Herman Melville's novel Pierre, or The Ambiguities, 1851. Pierre Glendinning was the only son of an affluent and haughty widow, a lady who externally furnished a singular example of the preservative and beautifying influences of unfluctuating rank, health, and wealth. When joined to a fine mind of medium culture, uncankered by any inconsolable grief, and never worn by sordid cares, in mature age, the rose still miraculously clung to her cheek. So this seems to be a passage from Herman Melville's novel Pierre, or The Ambiguities, 1852. That's an interesting observation of somebody. Go take a look at it. Here it is. You can read it. Let's take a further look at things here. This is early New York. Grace Church opened on a prominent site on Broadway above 10th Street in 1846, or a handsome park nearby. Oh, that's a handsome park nearby. That's an early New York park. Very interesting. A good book. This is a good book. This is Grace Church also, another that can be read. That's nice architecture here. Well, let's see this. The Ernest Fiedler family lived in a Greek revival townhouse at 38 Bond Street, probably built in the 1830s. Francis H. Henrich's family portrait, executed circa 1850, is regarded as probably the most faithful contemporary illustration of the parlors in that decade. Oh, that's a very beautiful decade. I mean, that's a very beautiful parlor. Look at that. That's really something special. And they say it's a portrait by Francis H. Heinrich, the family portrait, and it's executed circa 1850, and is regarded as, quote, probably the most faithful contemporary illustration of the parlors in that decade. That's a very good thing to know, and that's a nice scene, a very nice homey scene, very wonderful. Let's take another look here. Fashion. Quote, the lovely ladies who had bowling costumes this morning have driving costumes tonight. They smile and bow, the ribbons flutter, the gloves glisten, the air is soft, the band plays pleasantly. Over all shines the summer sun, but Newport lies beyond, imperturbable, and has other belles and beauties to remember. Harper's Monthly Magazine, 1854. That's a nice, it looks like a woodcut. This looks like a woodcut, like a postcard. I think, I know that Leon would like that. Leon is from Creamofcardstv. Creamofcardstv. You can look him up. And he has all types of postcards, and he talks about them. And if you're interested in postcards, you should look him up. Anyway, I think Leon would really like this postcard here. It looks like a cut of a postcard. Let's continue on. McAllister. Joseph Pulitzer took up Ward McAllister and printed his weekly columns in The World. The World, that was the publication. When McAllister died, the paper covered the funeral as an important civic story. So he was an important person. Oh, this is McAllister funeral, 1895. Grace Church, February 5th, 1895, the day of Ward McAllister's funeral, 1895. Oh, we're getting a nice view of all these people here. Mrs. Astor. Mrs. Astor intensely disliked being photographed. For many years, she would only appear in public wearing a hat and veil. Even in the evening, she wore a veil. It helped, perhaps, to strengthen... Oh, yeah. Oh, take care. See? It helped, perhaps, to strengthen the Astor mystique. All of the photographs which were taken of her were formal portraits, carefully controlled and posed. If you want to wait a minute, I'll be right with you. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Mrs. Stuyvesant Fish, Mamie Fish, Ava Belmont, and Tessie Ehrlich. Oh, take care. I'll give it to you later. Tessie Ehrlich formed a troika of intensely competitive and wealthy hostesses at Newport. Of the three, the florid, willful Mamie Fish had the sharpest tongue and the most scorn for solemnity, which did not prevent her in later years as Mrs. O.H.P. Belmont from pontificating on everything under the sun in the New York Times. So later on, in the later years, as Mrs. O.H.P. Belmont, she wants to pontificate on everything under the sun. In the New York Times, that was in the New York Times she did that. She became a columnist, and her name was Mrs. Stuyvesant Fish. They named the school Stuyvesant, probably after the family, maybe after her. Now, who's this? Christine Nielsen, on October 22nd, 1883, at the first night of the Metropolitan Opera House, Christine Nielsen sang the role of Margaret in Gounod's Faust. Nielsen created the role of Marguerite in the Lyric Opera in Paris, and had been a favorite in New York since her debut in 1870. The Old Met, occupying the block bounded by Broadway, West 40th Street, 7th Avenue, and West 39th Street, survived until April 16, 1966, when it was demolished and the Met moved to Lincoln Center. So there was the Old Met and the New Met. So Christine Nielsen sang the role at the first night of the Metropolitan Opera House on October 22nd, 1883. Mrs. Henry Clews. Lucy Madison Worthington's family were reunited by the Civil War. Her father died fighting in the Confederate Army. Her sister married a general in the Union Army who was later disgraced by a scandal in the Grant administration. Lucy married an Englishman, Henry Clews, who had made a fortune on Wall Street. His passion for making money nearly kept pace with her determination to spend it. Mrs. Henry Clews. Billy Vanderbilt. Here's Billy Vanderbilt. "I am the richest man in the world," remarked the smiling Billy Vanderbilt in 1883. And who was to say he was not? He had investments worth $194 million and an annual tax-free income of $10 million. $10 million. William Astor. William Astor, the intelligent, cultured younger son of William Buckhouse Astor, was deprived of a meaningful role in the Astor family affairs because his father and grandfather, John Jacob Astor, believed in primogeniture, which meant that the family fortune passed virtually intact to his older brother, John Jacob Astor III. His marriage to Caroline Schermerhorn was not a happy one for either of them. This is Schermerhorn House on the East River. In the 19th century, the banks of the East River from Midtown to Harlem was lined with handsome clapboarded country homes of the great landowners of New York. One branch of the Schermerhorns had an estate on East 73rd Street. The other Schermerhorn estate, portrayed above, was on 84th Street. From the rear veranda, you could see the picturesque shipping on the river, and beyond, Hellgate and semi-rural Queens. This is a very nice portrait here. This is a nice print. Very nice print of this is the Schermerhorn house on the East River. Residents of Sarsapilla, Townsend, raised by A.T. Stewart. A contemporary account describes the residents of Sarsaparilla, Townsend on 5th Avenue at 34th Street. It is 90 by 56 feet and occupies lots of ground in an elevated position, which cost $42,000. Its general appearance is of the rich, massive character common to many first-class houses. The galleries, walls, and columns are all decorated in the richest manner, with fresco painting, gilding, and elaborate moldings. The effect of the whole, when first beheld, is to bewilder with a sense of magnificence. A.T. Stewart had this edifice razed and built a far more extravagant structure on this site. Page 264. 264. So that's another page to see that. Another page to see the, let's see the far more extravagant. Oh, this is A.T. Stewart. Oh, this is not the other house. This is A.T. Stewart. Alexander T. Stewart was the most successful merchant the city had ever seen. At his death in 1876, he was worth $80 million. His wealth meant many things in New York. But the man who had accumulated so much money so quickly and so single-mindedly was an enigmatic figure. He has forgone all that many men value, wrote a contemporary. He has forgone all that men value, wrote a contemporary. All pleasures and ambitions, friendships and hatreds, societies and philanthropies, theories and philosophies have been made quite subordinate to this man, to this main and only purpose in life. Friendships and hatreds, societies and philanthropies, theories and philosophies have been made quite subordinate to this main